Hey friends, it's me, your girl, Kristen Janice, also known as KD, and I am here with day 14 of Black History Month. Now, the person I'm going to talk about today is not a lesser known person like most of the other people I have highlighted, but a very critical and important person, and one of the reasons why Black History Month is in February. So if you watched my first video, we talked about Dr. Carter G. Woodson and why he picked February to start Negro History Week, which later evolved into Black History Month in the 70s. And one of those reasons was that this prolific speaker and author and writer, like this person's birthday was February 14th, which is today, Valentine's Day, and that person is Frederick Douglass. Now, I was heavily introduced to Frederick Douglass throughout my upbringing in my primary years. Like, I knew who Frederick Douglass was, but in 8th grade, my social studies teacher, civics, actually the class was civics, we read the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass. Thank you to Marsha Rogers for all that you did for my education. May your soul rest in eternal peace. But we read the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, and that book changed my life. It was such an amazing narrative story of a firsthand account of what it meant to be enslaved. And one of the most powerful lines in that book is, I showed you how a man was made a slave, but I now will show you how a slave was made a man. Right? Just a reminder that we don't have to succumb to our circumstances. We don't have to fall prey to the things that are trying to make us that prey. Right? And we can absolutely, completely, utterly change the course of our life, which is exactly what Frederick Douglass did. From teaching himself to read and write to escaping enslavement and self-emancipating, he was, in all honesty, he was that dude. Now, he did some things in his personal life that I don't agree with, but we're not going to talk about that here today. Just know, nobody's perfect. We'll say that, right? So I want nobody like, well, we know nobody's perfect, myself included, and you too, if you're listening. So let's get into these facts. But just one of the reasons why, again, I picked Frederick Douglass is today is his birthday. And he just plays such a prominent role in the 1800s in helping to change the narrative around Black people, the capabilities of Black people, and advocating for civil and human rights. And also, he was a feminist. So, Frederick Douglass was born in 1818 and transitioned in 1895. He is well known for being an abolitionist, a powerful orator, a writer, and a statesman. Do that, boo. He was a formerly enslaved person who became one of the most powerful voices for abolition, civil rights, and human dignity in American history, even to this day. He was a self-taught reader and writer, and he used his oratory and literary skills to expose the horrors of slavery and to advocate for equality, justice, and freedom. His life journey from slavery to statesmanship embodied the very ideals of resilience, self-determination, and moral courage. He worked alongside abolitionists like William Lloyd Garrison and Harriet Tubman. He advised President Abraham Lincoln and became an advocate for not only Black rights, but also for women's rights, voting rights, and global human rights. Douglass's voice remains profoundly relevant even today, and it reminds us of the power of knowledge, truth, and persistence in the ongoing fight for justice on every front. So let's get into some of these amazing things that he did. Okay. Some of his key accomplishments. He literally wrote one of the most important slave narratives in history, and it's called The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, which is the book I was referencing. In 1845, he published his autobiography, The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, which became a bestseller and a cornerstone of abolitionist literature. It mattered because his firsthand account of slavery was a powerful refutation of pro-slavery propaganda, which claimed enslaved people were content or incapable of intellectual growth. Okay, I'm sorry. I got an attitude about that. His narrative exposed the violence, cruelty, and dehumanization of slavery, sparking global outrage and building support for the abolitionist cause. And it has become a foundational text in American literature, still widely read in schools and universities today. Okay? I read it back in 1995. But I've read it multiple times since then. That was my introduction to it. Again, he was a master orator and abolitionist voice. He was renowned for his extraordinary public speaking skills. Also a slap in the face of those who tried to share propaganda that like Black people were less intelligent or weren't capable of these things, which is why they needed to be enslaved. His oratory skills, his writing skills, they were like, I don't think that's an accurate depiction of Black people. He was renowned for his extraordinary public speaking skills, delivering speeches that moved audiences across the United States. His most famous speech is actually a speech I still read every year. What to the slave is the 4th of July. Now, he delivered the speech in 1852 in front of a mostly white audience. So that took a lot of courage and bravery because it could have still went down, okay, in 1852. In the speech, Douglass exposed the hypocrisy of American freedom, asking how a nation founded on liberty could celebrate independence while enslaving millions. Good question. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days of the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. It's powerful. Read it if you've never read it. It's widely available on the internet. This speech remains one of the most powerful critiques of American racism and inequality, still widely quoted in modern civil rights discussions because it's still true. Okay. Again, he was an advisor to President Abraham Lincoln and an advocate for the Emancipation Proclamation. During the Civil War, he became a key advisor to President Lincoln, advocating for the use of black soldiers in the Union Army and pushing for the immediate abolition of slavery. He pressured Lincoln to make the war about ending slavery because Abraham Lincoln himself said that's not, if he could unite the states without ending slavery, he would. That's what he said. Douglass was like, no. Abolition now. Abolition today, abolition forever. And that influenced the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. He helped recruit black soldiers for the Union Army, believing military service was a path to citizenship and equality for black Americans. Fun fact, there is no war that has taken place on U.S. soil where black people were not involved. And then he met with Lincoln several times discussing issues like racial justice and the treatment of black troops. He was also an advocate for women's rights and suffrage. He was a staunch advocate for women's rights, believing that the struggle for equality was incomplete without gender justice. Thank you. At the Seneca Falls Convention, he was the only black man to attend and one of the few men to sign the Declaration of Sentiments, which demanded equal rights for women, including the right to vote. He stated, "Right is of no sex, truth is of no color. God is the father of us all, and we are all brethren." Yes! His feminist legacy is that he worked alongside feminists like Susan B. Anthony, like I got my own beef with her, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and though he later disagreed with them when they opposed the 15th Amendment, which granted black men the right to vote without including women. Right? I have some things I want to say, but I'm gonna keep it together. Finally, he was a diplomat, statesman, and a champion for global human rights in the latter years of his life. He continued his public service, becoming one of the most prominent black statesmen of his time. He was the first black U.S. Marshal, which he became in 1877 and was appointed by Rutherford B. Hayes. He was the U.S. Minister to Haiti from 1889 to 1891 and represented the U.S. in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, advocating for black sovereignty and international solidarity. And he was a defender of black civil rights during Reconstruction and fought against the rise of Jim Crow laws, lynching, and racial violence, warning that the nation was backsliding on its promises of freedom. What can we learn from Frederick Douglass today? Number 1, knowledge is power. Educate yourself and others. Douglass understood that literacy was a tool of liberation, famously stating, "Once you learn to read, you will be free forever." Education remains a critical tool for empowerment, especially in the fight against inequality and misinformation. Remember to read, learn, and stay informed about issues that are affecting not just your community, but all communities. And educate others, especially young people, on the importance of history and civil rights. Speak truth to power because you need to use your voice for justice. His life was defined by his fearless use of words to challenge injustice, whether through speeches, writing, or public debates. Silence enables oppression. Your voice can inspire change even if it feels uncomfortable or risky. Use your platform, social media, community meetings, or public forums to speak out against injustice. Challenge racism, sexism, inequality in all its forms in your workplace, your schools, and your communities. Stand firm even when it's unpopular. Douglass often faced criticism from allies and enemies alike, but he never compromised his principles. He stood firm for immediate abolition, black men's suffrage, racial justice during Reconstruction, right? And literally did not let anybody move him off his square. True leadership requires moral courage, especially when you're standing alone. So stand by your values, even when they're unpopular. And support causes that align with justice, even if they're outside of your personal experience. Again, embrace intersectionality. It's a word I've used almost daily, but we need justice for all people. Douglass fought for the rights of enslaved people, women, immigrants, and workers, believing that human rights are universal. We need to support movements that address multiple forms of depression and ensure equality for all. And then persistence through setbacks. The fight for justice is long, okay? Despite the abolition of slavery, Douglass witnessed the rise of Jim Crow laws, lynching, and racial violence during Reconstruction, but he never stopped fighting. Progress is not linear. There will be setbacks, but the fight for justice requires endurance. Continue advocating for racial and social justice, even when progress feels slow. Support policies and organizations that fight against voter suppression, mass incarceration, and police brutality. Frederick Douglass' life and work are timeless lessons in courage, integrity, and the power of the human spirit. He showed that education liberates, truth disrupts, and persistence transforms societies. Ain't that the truth? Today, as we face ongoing struggles for racial justice, voting rights, gender equality, and human dignity, we can draw strength from Douglass's legacy. And his life is a call to action to remember to always educate yourself, always speak truth to power, always fight for justice on all fronts, and persist, because progress is possible. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Thank you, Frederick Douglass, and happy Valentine's Day. Remember, do what you need to do to be more than okay, because you deserve to be more than okay. Absolutely do what you need to do to live a life you love, because you deserve to live a life you love. And keep fighting. We'll win, I promise.